Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Work at Home Rockstar podcast. Excited for today's guest. She is a stress expert and the owner of Fletcher and Associates. And what she does is she helps people move from stress and overwhelm to comfort and ease by teaching people how to use some reusable tools that they can use at their own leisure and in the moment when it's happening. Very excited to be rocking out today with Barbara Fletcher. Hey, Barbara, you ready to rock?
I am. I'm excited to be here today.
Yes, I can't wait to hear about your journey.
Mhm.
So we always start off here on a good note. So tell me a story of success in your business that we can be inspired by.
So I think one of a recent client that I was working with arrived on my doorstep or my virtual doorstep today. And I said to him, talk to me about stress. And his response was, when I am stressed, I stay mad for 3 days. And that caught me off guard. So we did a session and he came back after week one and I said, so how was your week? And oh, he said it was great. And I said, so, how do you measure great? And he said, well, I only stayed mad for 30 minutes. And after week two, which was very shocking to me to move from 3 days to 30 minutes. And week two was, he said, well, I only stayed upset for 10 minutes and then I was able to sort things out. And the following week, he said, I just self-regulated, took myself out of the situation. And because now I have the tools. So that was a really profound shift in somebody that occurred right before my eyes in probably 4 weeks. And his measure of success when we finished up was his son told him that he no longer felt like he was walking on eggshells. So that's pretty powerful feedback from the people you care about. So that is probably one of my all-time favorites as it relates to success.
Wow. Yeah. Isn't it interesting that we don't get taught these things in school? Like this should be something that, because we all deal with stress, and especially nowadays, the stress is even getting crazier and we don't have the tools. Why? It baffles me why we don't learn this in school, but thank goodness for you.
It does me as well. And I think that we're doing a disservice to children and adults for that matter. I work with a number of entrepreneurs who are on high alert all the time. Many of them are juggling things that they're good at and some not so good at, which is invoking a stress response. And if they were to have these tools, their life journey would look quite different.
Agree 100%. Now, on the journey of life, sometimes things don't go as planned and we hit some bad notes. So I'm wondering, can you share with us something that didn't go as planned for you and how you recovered it or how we can avoid it?
Yeah. So mine was about 8 years ago, and we were experiencing some significant health issues in my family, and I wasn't taking very good care of myself. I was being a caregiver, and my stress response when it comes to how do I behave? So there are a number of stress responses. One of them is we're ready to fight. Another would be we flight or leave the scene, freeze, unable to move, faint. But there's also one that's really related to overcare, and that's my stress response. I go into big time overcare, and that's what I did. And I was not paying careful attention to what was happening to me and became very depleted. And I was presented with an option to coach with somebody, and it was a big ticket. And because I was depleted, not thinking clearly, I signed up. And as soon as I did, I had buyer's remorse, but that wasn't necessarily helpful in the situation. So it was a very valuable, succinct lesson to me that making sure that we take that time to be resilient ourselves is of utmost importance.
Yeah. Yeah, you've got to fill yourself up before you can start giving to other people, right? And that tends
Absolutely.
to be something that most people, I think, do suffer from. It's one of those things where you you feel like you're letting people down if you're focusing on yourself instead of them, right?
You know, the stewardess tells us, or steward tells us, to put the oxygen mask on ourselves first before we put it on the people next to us. And that seems, when we're in a stress response, seems illogical. At the same time, it is absolutely the most important thing we can do. And I think what happens is people sometimes equate relaxation with being helpful to stress. And although it does make us feel better, it is not equal to resilience. And resilience is really about our ability to bounce back from stress. And so relaxation isn't going to add to our battery, isn't
Yeah.
going to add to our energy.
Well, and one of the things that I've noticed, even my own response and even the responses of people around me, is that if you keep giving and giving and giving, eventually you will burn out. And then you have to take, days off from, caring for the people in your life, rather than just taking a few minutes here and there to, you know, have some me time, or whatever it is that you use to de-stress. And I think
Mhm.
that's the major danger, is that you end up having this pendulum of back and forth, because then all of a sudden you've ignored them for so long that you feel guilty, and then you're back into it again in this cycle of like care, disconnect, care, right?
Mhm. And that cycle does damage to our bodies. It shows up with wear and tear. So we think of that as it relates to the nervous system, and there are two branches, the parasympathetic and the sympathetic, and one has our foot on the brake and one has our foot on the gas. And that's the pendulum. And on a good day, our body is able to smooth that out a little bit. On a bad day, we get headaches, we get backaches, we can't think clearly. Some of the symptoms of what's happening.
My goodness. What a picture that paints. If you're just looking at your car, imagine you have your foot on the gas and the brake at the same time. You're burning gas, but you're not going anywhere, right?
That's exactly it. And so what we see is people who are less productive, um, don't have focus. Maybe they're not able to sleep at night. And so until we can help smooth that out with some self-regulation, they are creating that wear and tear on their bodies.
Now, let's talk a little bit about practicing, because it seems like this is a good topic for you. And in order to get good at anything, I make a lot of analogies with music. You've got to practice. You've got to put the time in,
Mhm.
right? And so, how do you approach, getting good and staying good at what you're doing?
So I'm really lucky because I teach and train people to do the things they need to practice. So I get to practice with them as they're learning. But one of the things that I like to do when I'm helping people figure out how to practice is I like to wedge these new habits in with things that they're already doing. Because if people have to find a brand new habit, it's difficult for them to set aside a separate amount of time. So, one person I'm working with right now, she practices while she's walking her dog. Another lady I've worked with says she doesn't like making her children's lunches in the morning, so she practices then. So we don't try and create a whole new experience. We try and wedge the new habit in with something that they're already doing. And for me, each client I get to speak to I get to practice. And I always practice before I begin because I need to be as clear and as concise and effective as I possibly can be.
Um, I read a book recently called Atomic Habits, and they called that habit stacking, which
That
is
would be
brilliant.
that's exactly where it came from. It
Yeah.
it is brilliant. And another book that I've read a while back, it's called Tiny Habits, which is equally as valuable. But for sure, Atomic Habits was a game changer for me because people who have difficulty sticking with something, we just need to stick this new habit to something that they already do and
Yeah.
just, you know, eh, and they go, okay, yeah, I can do that. Because every time they pick up the dog leash, they now go, they know they need to practice. Or they pick up the loaf of bread to make sandwiches, they're back in that zone.
Well, the big aha moment for me during that book was when they said that people that we perceive to be very, very disciplined people that have very good willpower actually have the least willpower because they have their life set up in a way where they don't have to use it, which blew my mind. You think about the people that have all the success in their lives and you think, well, people that are, in shape all the time. You're like, wow, I wish I had that kind of willpower. But I know people like that and they don't have willpower. They have their life set up where everybody that they know goes to the gym and hangs out there all the time, right?
They put their clothes out the night before with their sneakers, so that they trip over them on the way to the bathroom, and and it becomes part of who they are. No, I love that book because it it is difficult for people to find a way to take on anything more these days. And if I am unable to find a way to weave it in for them, it's unlikely they'll have success.
Yeah, I agree. So now, okay, what about tools? So, I mean, we were talking about tools during your intro and that you have some tools that you like. What other tools have you used in your business to make your life easier?
So right from the very beginning, I use Zoom, and I love it. I People are able to engage with me in a way that they might not be able to otherwise. Um, I think what's happened is over the pandemic, people are more friendly to Zoom than they might have been before. At the same time, because I'm wanting to hear about how well they're doing, what might have gone on in the last week, and I'm really paying close attention to facial expression. Zoom has been key because if I had been sitting across the table with them, I would have not been able to see their facial expressions unless I had been in their bubble. So Zoom is really a wonderful tool. The other thing that I think is most helpful for me is a calendar scheduling because people who are stressed, it's important that I make it absolutely as easy as possible for them to find a time. So if I use Calendly and I give them a link, they can poke around in my calendar and find a time that they can both envision and commit to, as opposed to, you know, other options which might be back and forth. So I think the two winners for me are Calendly and Zoom. I use a lot of different modalities, but those two would be my favorites.
Yeah, I agree. Both of those are essential in my business as well. And Zoom, I mean, you mentioned that like people are a lot more friendly to it now because I've been using these kinds of things for a lot long before the pandemic, and it was a little bit different. People would rather kind of meet in person. But depending on your work, I mean, meeting in person, you can't really concentrate as well when you're sitting at a coffee shop and there's so much stuff going on around you as you can when you're sitting in your office, right? And having a Zoom call. So I agree with that.
Hi, it's Marc Mawhinney from Natural Born Coaches, and I want to give two very big thumbs up to Tim Melanson and his Creative Crew agency. I have been using them for a long time, and I am 100% happy. They get the job done right, they're fast, and they let me focus on my business. I don't have to worry about anything. So again, I want to give them two very big thumbs up. I have no problem recommending them. I don't give testimonials for everyone because my name is attached to it, but I gladly do so for Tim and the Creative Crew agency. So use them, you won't regret it, and good luck.
I work with teams and groups, and so it's easier for me to see 8 people on the screen in a Brady Bunch format to see what they're thinking, how they're feeling, than it is for me to look around the room and try and catch everybody and not be as obvious as I might be. So Zoom is really effective, and I think from an entrepreneur standpoint, it really does facilitate an effective use of our time. I think overall, we probably are able to be a little bit more profitable because if we have to add runtime for wherever we're going to and we have to build that into the cost of the service, then I think that adds to what the client's going to pay.
Yeah, I agree. And then the other thing you mentioned about the calendar scheduling thing, I had a resistance to that at the very beginning when I was first thinking about doing it. It was actually one of my mentors, one of my coaches, and one of my clients. Actually, we kind of do things back and forth, who really pushed me towards doing it. And I just thought it was impersonal. I just thought, go see my calendar, talk to my people. I just thought it wasn't as,
Mm.
but oh my, the freeing of it, like from their perspective, of course, you've already mentioned it. People like to have control. People like to be able to choose something. They like to go and say, this is my calendar. This is the one I want. But from my perspective, what happened before was that if I was scheduling something, someone would say, oh, can you meet in the evening? Can you meet at like 7:30? And I'd say yes. but really I can't. My evenings are busy. I've got teens and sports. I've got so I like to have my days full first. If someone really needs an evening, well then fine, I can schedule it. But having a calendar tool allows me to set what's best for my schedule, and then people can choose within that. So it's like we both feel like we're in control of our schedule by using a scheduling tool like that. Does that make sense?
I remember I had a very poignant example of that. So it would be probably 4 years ago, and I was traveling in Costa Rica, and I was onboarding 2 groups of people to train, and there were 24. And so one of the things I like to do with clients is I like to schedule a 30-minute call prior to them joining the group so that I can build a rapport and get to know them. So this week I was in Costa Rica and people started to email me. And I was trying to schedule 24 people into my calendar. And I thought I was going to lose my mind. And I said, no. Then once I set up the calendar, I got very generous and I made the calendar all week, which was another mistake. And so then some valuable lessons were learned where I truncated it back to 2 days at the beginning of the week, gave them lots of leeway. And lo and behold, everybody found their way.
Imagine that, eh? Yeah, wow, yeah. And then not to mention time zones. We haven't even gotten into time zones if you're working with people in other areas of the planet.
Well, it was 3 hours difference.
Mhm.
And so they were scheduling, and I was always trying to convert. And so the Calendly was able to effectively do that. I created the the period of time that I was available, and I made it broad, and people fit themselves in.
Yep, they sure did. So now let's talk about the band. Let's talk about, because, you can run your business all on your own if you want. However, at some point, it is useful having good people around you. And so how do you approach delegating? How do you approach team building, all that stuff?
So I love to coach, and I'm really good at it. I'm not nearly as good at social media posts and writing blogs. I can do it if I can get in the zone, but I would sooner jump on a call and help somebody. So I've been, I would say, more forced because there was only so much of me to go around to look at that. So I have somebody who helps with the social media and also the writing of the posts. I also have somebody who helps with my WordPress and my website, because those are just things that I need to oversee, but I don't need to do.
So now when you say oversee, what does that look like to you?
So oversee for me for the social media, I'm fortunate enough that I have a colleague, she and I do a podcast as well. And so we actually create a new podcast every Tuesday, and I hand an audio document, a transcription of the podcast over to my social media guru, who happens to be in the Philippines, which is another time zone. And she is able to create from that content that will be social media posts. She will create a blog, and she and I build a good rapport. We have a conversation every Monday morning. It's 8 o'clock Monday morning, and it's 9 o'clock Monday night where she is. And we just check in for the week, see if there's any questions, anything that I might need that would be special, and then she carries on.
Love it, love it. Okay. Now I would like to talk about one more thing before we get into your to your guest solo. Now let's talk about the jam room. So where do you get your work done, and how would you suggest someone set up their home office?
So I'm blessed. We actually have a couple of homes, and so the one that I spend the bulk of my time is on a lake, and I face the lake, which is helpful for me. I'm able to connect with nature, so at any point in time I might see deer going by, or a fox, or geese, or ducks, and that really is helpful for me. I like to be surrounded by comfort, so in my office I have a bit of a recliner so I can sit at my desk. I have elevations for my computer and wireless headphones, and my all the gadgets that make it easy. But I need to feel comfortable. Now, one of the other things that I do is if I feel like I'm getting stale, or I'm just needing something a little different, I may actually rearrange my office, just move things around a bit. And, that my husband probably thinks I'm a bit crazy because he likes things a particular way, but change is helpful for me. I get a new sense of, oh, I'm walking into a new space.
I like changing things around a little bit too, but I also like to the predictability of things as well. But yeah, like it's so cool that you get to work on your lake and all that stuff. I think that it is important to make your space, an oasis, whatever you see that as, right?
Yeah, I have all the things that matter to me around, whether it's, familiar pictures and things that make me smile. And that the environment is really, really important to me. I have a home office that I use in the city, and it's equally good. I bought a new stand-up desk there, and I bought a wobble seat to be comfortable there. So environment's really important. And I think that because we spend probably more time than we might have when we were, if we were doing 8:15 to 4:30, I think it's really important that we feel less like it's drudgery and more like it's an opportunity.
Totally. So now, Barb, it's time for your guest solo. So what's exciting in your business right now?
So what I do is I really like to help people who are feeling stressed, anxious, and overwhelmed. And that often is individuals who jump in one-on-one to learn about tools that they can use in the moment to build some resiliency. And I remarked on someone I was working yesterday, and her response to me was, I guess the lead up to it was, "How are you doing? Have you seen anything change?" And she said, "I feel more in control and less anxious." And this was just after a couple of weeks. So that's the kind of outcome that I see. And, I believe that entrepreneurs and people who are working from home really need these tools to self regulate, because the blur between home and office exists. And so being able to self regulate in both places is of utmost importance to yourself and your family.
Oh, I agree. I agree. And, oftentimes we tend to, look for problems that are external, right? Oh, if that was fixed, then everything would be fine. If that was different, then everything would be fine. But really, I mean, we just oftentimes just need to take a look inside and find out what we can improve about how we handle those external situations, right?
It really, in truth, it's never about changing the other person. It's always about moving from a place where we're reacting to a place where we can respond. And when we're able to respond, then we've self-regulated first, and we're able to, you know, meet them in a very different space than we might have otherwise.
What would be the thing that would be holding people back from getting this kind of help from you?
I think emotions are messy. People are fearful of digging in, I think, because they think it's going to be troublesome. And I think what I would promise them is that they'll always feel better. I've never worked with anybody who didn't feel better, and it doesn't have to be as messy as they think it's going to be. It really, it, I come from a place of compassion and empathy, and they'll be surprised at, after a week or two, that they'll find some ease that they didn't know existed. And I think the other thing that happens is they think it's going to take a long time to feel better. And the truth is, it doesn't. A couple of weeks, and you will see a noticeable shift, provided you practice. And the practice is 10 minutes a day. It's not going to the gym for 30 minutes, 10 minutes a day. And we talked about habits and how do we stack that. So, people will find a time to practice while they're already doing something else.
Yeah. And I think a lot of us have experiences where we've opened up and it not being the right person that they were opening up to as
Hmm.
well with the right tools. And maybe that might be holding people back, is that, well, last time I opened up, this is what happened.
Yeah.
So I'm keeping it locked up, right?
So I think what people need to understand, that this is not therapy. This is coaching and mentoring. So I'm there to be your guide. And you're going to share whatever level you want to share. And then we're going to figure out strategies to help move you forward. And I'll walk beside you I'm there, but it's not the same.
So how do we find out more about this then?
So you can find me on my website, which is www.barb-fletcher.com. I'm also on social media on Facebook and Instagram, and I show up on LinkedIn as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for rocking out with me today, Barb. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you.
And to the listeners, make sure you subscribe, rate, and comment, and we'll see you next time on the Work at Home Rockstar podcast.